First, we have Jason Furman, who I kind of wanted to bring some of the people that we've talked to over the months that Chair Siddiqui and I have been working on this, and I think Jason Furman is one of the people we'd love to bring in. He is a professor of economic policy at HKS and the economics school at Harvard. Previously, he was spent 8 years as the top economic advisor to President Obama, including serving as the 28th chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors from August 2013 to January 2017, acting as both President Obama's chief economist and as a member of the cabinet. During this time, he played a role in most of the major economic policies of the Obama administration, and he also served during the Clinton administration. And there's a much longer bio, but I'll let him introduce himself and just to talk a little bit about what he thinks about this proposal and, in general, his experience in the Obama administration and economic perspectives.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Chair Siddiqui, Councillor Azim, and members of the committee for having me here today. As Councillor Azim said, I am currently a professor, the Aetna Professor of the Practice of Economic Policy, jointly at the Kennedy School and in the Economics Department at Harvard University. I have been a resident of Cambridge with my family for the last 7 years and lived here for a decade before that in college and graduate school. I've done research and policy work on a very wide range of economic issues, but towards the end of the Obama administration, when I was chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, we were doing research to try to uncover some of the sources of two of the problems driving almost every other economic malaise in our country at the time, which were slow productivity growth and high levels of inequality. I would add now the issue of inflation to that list of macroeconomic maladies. And in searching through all the different causes of these issues, a lot of them went straight to issues that weren't matters of federal and national policy, but were actually decisions and policy choices made by states and localities, including cities like Cambridge, all around the country, and in particular, land use restrictions. From a macroeconomic perspective, the evidence was that as land use restrictions have grown in recent decades and grown to the point where, as Councillor Azim said, much of the building stock throughout the major cities in our country, especially in the Northeast and on the Pacific coast, could not be built today. As those land use restrictions have grown, the supply of housing has diminished. Rents and affordability have grown to the point where now nearly half of people are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. Mobility between places, and especially the ability of people to move to some of the most attractive and desirable places to live, both for their amenities and for the types of high wage and high productivity jobs they offer, like Cambridge and this area, have diminished. And more recently, almost the entire excess of inflation above the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation target is due to the extraordinarily rapid growth of housing prices. We at the Council of Economic Advisors did research on this topic, published that research, discussed it extensively with President Obama. It was something that when he would meet with mayors would make one of the priority things that he would point out to them and suggest to them. And in September of 2016, the administration developed, with my help and leadership, something called the Housing Development Toolkit, with both a diagnosis of our affordability problems and recommendations. When Councillor Azim came to me, I was thrilled that so much of what he was talking about and the ambitious ideas that he had to make a better Cambridge were very much consistent with both the analysis and the recommendations that we had made towards the end of the administration. This is also part of a broader national trend towards reducing exclusionary zoning, understanding the ways in which it reduces supply, makes things less affordable, excludes people from living in the places they want to live. And there have been reforms in places as diverse as Oregon, Montana, or as close to us as Newton, Brookline, Everett, and Revere. Economics is the study of trade-offs and the idea that nothing comes for free. In some cases, there are real trade-offs here, but I think some of those trade-offs have also been misunderstood. The economic theory is clear that when you have increased supply, you would expect both the quantity to go up and the price to go down. Economists are rarely content, though, with just appealing to theory. We're interested in seeing empirical evidence. And there have been a substantial number of studies over the last 2 decades, some of them nationwide, some of them looking at particular areas like the Boston area, some of them focused on land use restrictions in general, some of them on specific restrictions like parking and limits on multifamily construction. And I would summarize the evidence as consistently finding that all of these types of restrictions reduce supply, reduce the number of people that can live in the areas. In terms of rent and pricing, some of them have found basically no effect on rent and pricing. Some of them have found that it lowers rents and makes it affordable for people to live. I would say if either one of those outcomes were the case, it's something I would recommend to Cambridge. I think on balance, the evidence is that it lowers rents, and some of the places that have found no change in rents actually found that there was a broad reduction in rents, both for the areas that undertook the reform and neighboring areas that didn't. It didn't increase the difference in rent between them, but it made it more affordable, both for residents in the place undertaking the reform and for their neighbors as well. I want to conclude by saying, if you are looking for a 2-bedroom, 1,000 square foot apartment in Cambridge right now, you might have to pay something like $3,000 a month. You might not be able to find an apartment because of the limits on the number here. Reducing the artificial restriction on this number is one of the best things that I think this committee could recommend, one of the best things this council could do, both for the city of Cambridge and for the United States economy as a whole. And asking people to, in effect, pay more because of some theory about what a neighborhood should look like, I think is a trade-off that I, at least personally, would not want to impose and ask the people of Cambridge to pay that cost of either not living here or living here at a higher price, because I have a particular theory about what a neighborhood should or shouldn't look like when neighborhoods have evolved, changed in so many wonderful ways over time, and I hope to be living here for a long time and continue to see that happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Furman. I think I just had one question for you, and then I think this is the only point in the presentation today that Jason will be speaking, so if anyone else from the body wants to make any comments or ask any questions, we can do that now before we continue to the next speaker. But I just wanted to ask a little bit, as a Cambridge resident who lives in Cambridge, how would you feel about having these higher density buildings in your neighborhood? Would you be comfortable about the scale and density that we're talking about here today?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say that my comments today were as an economist and as somebody who has studied this as a policy issue. Personally, I love cities. I love density. I grew up in New York City. I now feel 1,000,000% at home here, and I'm far more enthusiastic, for example, about our local sports teams and the ones I might have mistakenly supported as a youth. And the more people that could live here in Cambridge with me, the more restaurants we're going to have, the more shops we're going to have, the better jobs we're going to have for people that need them, the better opportunities we're going to have, both for residents like me and the number of people that will come here and join us. So I'd be thrilled if this became a denser place.
Thank you. I just wanted to create some space for anyone on the body. I think we do have to keep the conversation moving, and I know Jason has to leave, but if anyone had any comments, otherwise I'll continue on.
Vice Mayor Mel?
Just thank you, for that. I think it puts a lot of that in perspective, and I think that we I think sometimes when people, this is a complex problem, and it needs multiple answers, and there's this big debate that always goes on in Cambridge that, supply and demand doesn't apply here, and we don't need to increase the supply of housing because that won't do anything to bring down rents. But from what you're saying, that is not your experience, as given your professional experience and all the work that you've done in this area, that it may not solve everything, but it's clearly not unimportant.
Correct, and I think it's hard to solve anything without this being part of the answer. You need more supply, and certainly it's not the only thing I would recommend you do, but the more ambitiously you can tackle this, the better the other policies you consider would work.
Councilor Nolan?
Thanks so much. Hopefully you're aware that we've actually been working on this since 2020, I think, and as Chair Siddiqui noted, we're on record as saying that's exactly what we need to do to have greater density. I don't know if you're aware of that prior work that the council has done. And as we move forward, I think it's important, given your work, for us also to recognize that as much as we do, I'm curious, and this is maybe not the time to answer it, how successful that was to get a range of communities to actually follow that, because whatever we do, obviously we're a certain size. If all surrounding communities don't do it, it will not end up having as great an impact. So I'm just curious if there's a report on the impact of the 2016 report to try to get that across the country, recognizing there was a big change in 2016 in the federal administration, but that doesn't mean that the mayors weren't necessarily able to follow up on it, and the city administration and governance.
Yeah. So I'm certainly aware of what Cambridge has done and have read a few of the studies done, including by the Joint Housing Center at Harvard, that have studied the impact, including the increased construction that we've seen here in Cambridge. So I think Cambridge is moving in the right direction, and that's terrific. Because of the change in Massachusetts law, a change that not every part of Massachusetts is accepting, but some parts have accepted it and started to make changes. A number of our neighbors are moving. I think if we're more ambitious and leapfrog some of those efforts, that first of all, even if they don't do anything, it will make Cambridge a better place. So even if no one does anything, but certainly part of my enthusiasm about being here is that I would love Cambridge to set a national model for this and people to see it, what you all do, see what it does to make lives better here in our city, and want to adopt similar ideas elsewhere.
Thank you so much, Professor Furman, for everything you've said here today. I want to continue on to our...
Sorry, Councilor,
sorry, Aisha.
Councilor Whistle.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today and sharing your knowledge, your expertise with us. I just had a quick question. I was going to actually save it for later, but really just wanted to share. I was speaking to one of my colleagues who work with some 6th and 7th graders right now who are doing a project. I worked for the Housing Authority, and so many of the students who are participants in this program are residents of Cambridge Housing, and they're doing a project right now where they are exploring living in Cambridge when they enter adulthood. And what they're thinking to themselves is that they may not be able to afford it because of the high costs of rents and stuff right now. And so my challenge, and I bring this up now versus raising it a little later on in the call, is to really charge us as a community to really think about those 11 to 13-year-olds right now who are grappling with how much money will they need to earn in order to continue to live in the city that raised them. And so as we continue to talk about density and as we talk about affordability and continuing to be the beautiful diversity that we are and be even national models for other cities and districts across the nation, we also want to think about making sure that our local Canterbridgians can continue to be Canterbridgians, even in this ever-changing market in which we have before us. So I guess in terms of a question, how will we tell our young people, especially those who are poor, who are living in our lowest of incomes, that unless you're continuing to live in public housing, you may not actually be able to afford to live in the city of Cambridge. What's the conversation that you would have with that 6th or 7th grader right now?
So first of all, I'd tell that 6th and 7th grader they're asking absolutely the right question. And one of the most important questions they're asking about thinking about their own futures. I would say to them that we need more apartments in Cambridge. If there are fewer buildings that just have one family in them and more buildings that have a number of families in them, that's not going to guarantee them that they can afford to live in Cambridge, but that will give them more of a fighting shot than they have right now. When it comes to the specific proposals, my understanding, and it was just outlined by Councillor Azim, it includes 20% inclusionary. So if you can build something bigger here, you're going to build something affordable as part of it, and so it will increase both parts of it. And I'd say this, as I said to Vice Mayor McGovern, this isn't the only thing I would do. Other steps, and some of them are federal, like housing vouchers, which are hard for a city like Cambridge to afford. I think it's scandalous that I think it's 20% of people who qualify for them get them. I think everyone that qualify for them should get them. So some of these problems are ones that the federal government should solve, not suggesting you wait for them, but I would push them on this issue as well.
We are talking about municipal vouchers. Anyway, back to you, Councillor Azim.
Thank you, Chair Siddiqui. So thank you for that, Professor Furman.